Welcome to the Sleepy Network. Tonight, we drift slowly into the warm desert of ancient Egypt, where silence stretches across the sands and time seems to rest like a sleeping giant. The year is 1922. The sun is setting over the Valley of the Kings, painting the limestone cliffs in shades of gold and amber. The air is still and warm, carrying the faint scent of sand and ancient stone. In this peaceful valley, where pharaohs have slept for thousands of years, a story is about to unfold, a story of discovery, of patience, and of treasures hidden beneath the sand for over 3,000 years. Our tale begins with a man named Howard Carter. Picture him now, standing on the edge of the valley as the evening light fades. He is 48 years old, with weathered hands and eyes that have searched these sands for decades. Carter has been an archaeologist in Egypt since he was 17 years old. That's 31 years of careful digging, of reading ancient hieroglyphs, of dreaming about what might lie beneath the next layer of sand. The Valley of the Kings spreads out before him like a vast outdoor museum. But unlike a museum, where everything is carefully displayed and labeled, this valley keeps its secrets buried deep. The ancient Egyptians chose this place carefully. They wanted their pharaohs to rest undisturbed, to journey safely into the afterlife with all their treasures intact. The valley is isolated, surrounded by high cliffs that form a natural barrier. The entrances to the tombs were hidden, covered with rocks and sand after the burial ceremonies were complete. By 1922, most people believe that all the major tombs in the Valley of the Kings have been found. 62 tombs have been discovered over the years. Some were grand and elaborate, though, sadly, most had been robbed in ancient times. The tomb robbers of old Egypt knew the value of gold and precious stones. They would break into the tombs, sometimes just years after the burial, taking whatever they could carry. But Howard Carter believes differently. He has a feeling deep in his bones that there is still something waiting to be found. He has spent years studying the records, the ancient papyri that list the pharaohs of Egypt, and there is one name that haunts him: Tutankhamun. The boy king who ruled Egypt for just 9 years, from about 1323 to 1314 BC. There are mentions of him in the historical records, but no tomb has been found. Where does the boy king rest? Carter's search for Tutankhamun has not been easy. For 6 years, he's been funded by a wealthy Englishman named Lord Carnarvon. George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, is a man who loves Egypt and its mysteries. He has provided the money for Carter's excavations year after year. But even Lord Carnarvon's patience has limits. The search has been expensive, and so far they have found very little. Imagine the quiet conversations between Carter and Carnarvon in the evenings. They sit in Carnarvon's comfortable house near Luxor, maps spread out on the table before them. The oil lamps cast dancing shadows on the walls. Carter points to different areas of the valley, explaining his theories. Here, he says, pointing to a spot on the map, we found some items with Tutankhamun's name. They were in another tomb, seemingly moved there. This suggests his tomb is nearby. But where? The summer of 1922 has been particularly difficult. Lord Carnarvon is losing faith. He has spent thousands of pounds on the excavation, and his family is beginning to question this expensive hobby. He calls Carter to his estate in England. They walk through the gardens on a cool English morning, so different from the heat of Egypt. Carnarvon speaks gently but firmly. This will be the last season, he tells Carter. One more season of digging. And then we must accept that perhaps Tutankhamun's tomb will never be found. Or perhaps it never existed at all. Carter listens quietly. He understands Carnarvon's position, but his heart is heavy. He has dedicated his life to this search. He knows, somehow he just knows, that the tomb is there, waiting. He convinces Carnarvon to fund one final season. Just one more. Carter even offers to pay for part of it himself if necessary. Carnarvon, seeing the determination in Carter's eyes, agrees one last season. By late October 1922, Carter is back in the Valley of the Kings. The summer heat has faded to a more bearable warmth. The excavation season can begin. Carter has hired his usual team of Egyptian workers, men who have worked with him for years. They know his methods, his careful way of removing sand and debris layer by layer. Among them is his trusted foreman, Ahmed Girigar, who has been with Carter for many seasons. Carter has decided to excavate in an area near the tomb of Rameses VI. It's a triangular patch of ground that has been somewhat overlooked. Previous archaeologists have worked around it, but never systematically cleared this particular spot. There are some ancient workmen's huts here, temporary structures built when Ramesses' tomb was being constructed over 3,000 years ago. These huts have to be carefully removed first. On November 1st, the work begins in earnest. Picture the scene in the early morning light. The workers arrive as the sun rises, the air still cool and pleasant. They carry their tools, simple but effective. Picks to break up the hardened sand and debris, baskets to carry away the rubble, brushes to clean delicate surfaces. The work is slow and methodical. This is not treasure hunting. This is archaeology. Every layer of sand might contain something important, a piece of pottery, a fragment of papyrus, a tool left behind by ancient workers. For 3 days, they clear away the ancient huts. Stone by stone, they document and remove these structures. Carter makes notes in his journal, sketching the positions of the huts, recording any finds. Even these simple workers' huts tell a story. They show where the ancient laborers lived while they carved out the royal tombs. You can almost imagine them, these workers of long ago, sitting in the shade of these huts during their midday break, drinking water from clay jars, perhaps talking about their families back in the village. On the morning of November 4th, something happens. It starts like any other day. The sun rises over the eastern cliffs, painting them pink and gold. The workers begin their careful excavation. They have cleared the huts and are now digging down into the underlying debris. The sound of picks on sand and rock creates a steady rhythm. Then, one of the workers, a young boy who carries water for the team, notices something. His job is simple but important. In the heat of the Egyptian sun, the workers need constant water. The boy moves among them with his water jars, and as he does, he kicks at the sand with his feet. But this time, his foot hits something hard, not a rock, but something flat and smooth. He calls out softly to the nearest worker. Together they brush away the sand, and there it is, a step, a carved stone step leading downward into the earth. The work stops. Everyone gathers around. Carter is called immediately. He hurries over, his heart beginning to race. Could this be it? Could this be what he's been searching for all these years? He kneels beside the step, brushing away more sand with his own hands. Yes, it is definitely a step carved from the bedrock, leading down. But Carter is a careful man. He has been disappointed before. This could be anything: an unfinished tomb, a storage chamber, a false start abandoned by ancient workers. He orders the team to continue clearing, but slowly, carefully. By the end of the day, they have uncovered several more steps, 12 steps in total, leading down to what appears to be a doorway. The doorway is sealed with plaster and stones, and there, like a whisper from the past, Carter can make out seal impressions in the plaster, the seals of the royal necropolis. This is a royal tomb. That evening, Carter can barely contain his excitement. He sends a telegram to Lord Carnarvon in England. The message is brief but electrifying. At last have made wonderful discovery in valley. A magnificent tomb with seals intact. Recovered, same for your arrival. Congratulations. Can you imagine Carnarvon's reaction when he receives this telegram? He is at Highclere Castle, his estate in Hampshire. Perhaps he is having breakfast when the butler brings him the message. His hands might tremble slightly as he reads it. After all these years, after all the expense and doubt, Carter has found something. But now comes perhaps the hardest part. Carter must wait. He has recovered the steps with sand and posted guards to watch over the site day and night. He will not open the tomb without Carnarvon. It is only right that his patron, the man who has supported this search for so long, should be there for the opening. But Carnarvon is in England. It will take him weeks to travel to Egypt. Those weeks of waiting must have been torture for Carter. Every day he visits the site. He checks on the guards. He stands above those hidden steps, knowing that beneath his feet lies a sealed tomb. What is down there? Whose tomb is it? Is it intact, or has it been robbed like so many others? He spends his evenings making preparations. He orders supplies that might be needed. lamps and candles for light, photographic equipment to document everything, preservation materials in case they find delicate objects. He writes in his journal speculating about what might lie below. He reviews his notes about Tutankhamun, refreshing his memory about this obscure boy king. Tutankhamun, Carter knows, came to the throne when he was only about 9 years old. Imagine a child of 9 suddenly becoming the ruler of the most powerful nation in the ancient world. The boy's original name was Tutankhamun, which means the living image of Aten. He was probably the son of the controversial Pharaoh Akhenaten, who had tried to change Egypt's religion, focusing worship on a single god, the Aten or sun disk. When Tutankhamun became pharaoh, Egypt was in turmoil. Akhenaten's religious reforms had been unpopular. The powerful priests of the old gods had lost their influence and wealth. The economy was struggling. The military was unhappy. This young boy, guided by his advisors, began to restore the old ways. He changed his name to Tutankhamun, the living image of Amun, signaling a return to the traditional gods. He moved the capital back to Thebes. He reopened the temples, but his reign was short. He died when he was only 18 or 19 years old. The cause of his death is unknown. Some ancient texts suggest he died suddenly. Unexpectedly, there was no time to prepare a proper royal tomb. His burial might have been hurried, his tomb modest compared to the great pharaohs who ruled for decades. This is what Carter ponders during those long weeks of waiting. If this is Tutankhamun's tomb, what will they find? Will it reflect his short reign, his youth, the turbulent times he lived in? Finally, in late November, Lord Carnarvon arrives in Egypt, accompanied by his daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert. Lady Evelyn is in her early 20s, intelligent and adventurous. She shares her father's love of Egyptology. The journey from England has been long, by ship through the Mediterranean, then by train to Luxor. But the excitement of Carter's discovery has made the journey seem shorter. On November 24th, the real work begins again. The workers carefully remove the sand that Carter had used to recover the steps. Lord Carnarvon and Lady Evelyn watch as each step is revealed again. The anticipation is almost unbearable. When they reach the bottom of the stairs, the sealed doorway is fully exposed. Now Carter can examine the seals more carefully. His hands shake slightly as he holds up a lamp to see better. Some of the seals bear the name he has been hoping for, Tutankhamun, the boy king. After all these years, he has found Tutankhamun's tomb. But there is something troubling. In one corner of the doorway, it appears that the plaster has been broken and then resealed. This suggests that the tomb might have been entered before, perhaps by ancient tomb robbers. Carter's heart sinks a little. Will this be another empty tomb, stripped of its treasures thousands of years ago? There is only one way to find out. On November 25th, Carter begins to carefully remove the sealed doorway. Each stone is numbered and photographed before being removed. This is scientific archaeology. Every detail must be recorded. Behind the sealed doorway, they find a descending corridor filled with limestone chips and rubble. This filling is a good sign. The ancient Egyptians would fill corridors like this to deter tomb robbers. It would take considerable effort to clear all this debris, and tomb robbers preferred easy targets. The fact that the corridor is still filled suggests that any ancient robbery was limited. The clearing of the corridor takes time. The workers form a human chain, passing baskets of rubble from hand to hand. The corridor is about 30 feet long, sloping downward into the bedrock. As they clear it, they find things that make Carter's pulse quicken. Broken pottery, seals with Tutankhamun's name, fragments of painted clay. At the end of the corridor, they find another sealed doorway. This one also shows signs of being opened and resealed in ancient times. The tomb has definitely been entered before, but the resealing suggests it was done officially, perhaps by necropolis guards who discovered a robbery and repaired the damage. November 26th, a Sunday. This is the day that will go down in history. Carter makes a small hole in the upper corner of the second sealed doorway. He needs to see what lies beyond before they fully open it. He inserts an iron rod to test for any obstacles. Finding none, he widens the hole slightly. The moment has come. Carter lights a candle and holds it up to the hole. At first, he can see nothing. The hot air escaping from the tomb makes the candle flame flicker, but as his eyes adjust to the darkness beyond, He begins to see things, strange shapes, the glint of gold. Lord Carnarvon, standing behind him, can't bear the suspense. "Can you see anything?" he asks. Carter's response has become one of the most famous quotes in archaeological history. "Yes," he says, "wonderful things." Those two words, wonderful things, they hardly capture what Carter is seeing. As his eyes adjust, he can make out the shapes more clearly, golden couches in the form of strange animals, statues, chests, everywhere the glint of gold. The tomb appears to be packed with objects piled upon each other like a storeroom of treasures. They widen the hole enough to shine an electric torch inside. Now they can see more clearly. The room beyond is not large, perhaps 12 feet by 26 feet, but it is crammed with objects. 3 large gilt couches dominate the space, carved in the shapes of animals. A cow, a lioness, a composite creature with the head of a hippopotamus. These are ritual couches meant to carry the dead pharaoh in the afterlife. Beneath and around the couches are countless other objects, chests and boxes, many inlaid with ivory and ebony, vases of alabaster and pottery, dismantled chariots, their golden decorations catching the light, stools, chairs, beds, and standing guard at the far end of the room, 2 life-size statues of the king himself, made of wood covered in black resin and gold. They stand like sentinels, each holding a staff and mace, wearing golden sandals and golden kilts. Carter and the others are speechless. In all his years in Egypt, Carter has never seen anything like this. Most tombs were emptied in ancient times, but here, despite some evidence of entry, the tomb is substantially intact. The objects that would have been most valuable to ancient thieves, the gold and precious items, are still here. That first evening, they can only look. Carter allows Lord Carnarvon, Lady Evelyn, and his assistant Calendar to enter the tomb briefly. They must be careful not to disturb anything. The floor is covered with fragments that have fallen from the objects over the millennia. Every step must be watched. They speak in whispers, as if afraid to disturb the sleeping king. The variety of objects is astounding. There are weapons, bows and arrows, throw sticks, daggers. There are musical instruments, including trumpets that haven't been played for 3,000 years. There are games, including boards for playing senet, the ancient Egyptian game of passing. There are fans made of ostrich feathers, their handles covered in gold. There are vessels for oils and perfumes, cosmetic containers, mirrors of polished bronze. Each object tells a story. The Egyptians believed that the afterlife was much like this life, only perfect and eternal. The dead pharaoh would need everything he had used in life, food and drink, clothing and sandals, furniture to sit and sleep on, weapons to hunt with, games to play, servants to attend him, represented by small figurines called shabtis. As Carter's eyes roam over this incredible collection, he notices something else. On the right-hand wall of the chamber between the 2 sentinel statues, there is another sealed doorway. This one is guarded not just by the statues, but by what appears to be a low wall of stones. What lies beyond this door? Could it be the burial chamber itself? The temptation to break through immediately must be overwhelming, but Carter is a professional. Everything must be done properly, scientifically. Before they can explore further, they must document and clear this first chamber, which Carter will call the antechamber. Every single object must be photographed, numbered, described, and carefully removed for preservation. But that is work for another day. For now, they retreat from the tomb, resealing the hole they have made. Guards are posted. The news of the discovery cannot be kept secret for long, but for now only a handful of people know what lies beneath the sand of the Valley of the Kings. That night Carter cannot sleep. His mind races with what he has seen, the golden gleam of the treasures, the faces of the guardian statues, so lifelike they seem about to speak the sealed doorway that promises even greater wonders beyond. He thinks of Tutankhamun, the boy who became king, who died so young. For over 3,000 years, these objects have been waiting in the darkness, waiting for this moment, waiting to tell their story. The next few days are a whirlwind of activity. Word of the discovery spreads quickly. Reporters begin arriving in Luxor. The Egyptian Antiquities Service must be notified officially. Experts must be brought in to help with the preservation and documentation. Carter realizes that clearing the tomb properly will take months, perhaps years. This is not a job for one man or even a small team. This will require resources and expertise from around the world. Carter begins to assemble his team. He brings in Arthur Mace, an archaeologist with the Metropolitan Museum of New York. To help with the delicate conservation work, he hires Harry Burton, the best archaeological photographer in Egypt, to document every stage of the excavation. Alfred Lucas, a chemist, is brought in to help preserve fragile objects. There are draftsmen to make detailed drawings, experts in ancient languages to translate inscriptions. The tomb becomes a careful archaeological laboratory. Electric lights are installed, powered by a generator. A photographic darkroom is set up in a nearby tomb. A conservation laboratory is established where fragile objects can be treated immediately. A narrow-gauge railway is constructed to carry objects from the tomb to the laboratory. On November 29th, the tomb is officially opened in the presence of Egyptian officials. The hole in the doorway is enlarged to create a proper entrance. Now the real work can begin. But first, Carter and his team must fully explore what they have found. With better lighting, they can see details they missed before. The walls of the antechamber are rough, undecorated limestone. This is unusual for a royal tomb. Most pharaohs' tombs are covered with elaborate paintings and inscriptions. Texts from the Book of the Dead to guide the deceased through the underworld. The lack of decoration suggests that this tomb was prepared in a hurry, that there wasn't time for the usual elaborate preparations. But what the tomb lacks in wall decoration, it makes up for in the objects it contains. Each piece is a masterwork of ancient craftsmanship. Take, for example, one of the chests. It is made of wood, covered with ivory veneer, and decorated with thousands of tiny pieces of inlaid ivory and ebony forming intricate patterns. The work is so fine that even with magnification, it's hard to see how the ancient craftsmen achieved such precision. Or consider the throne, found against one wall. It is covered in gold leaf, inlaid with glass, faience, and semi-precious stones. The back panel shows Tutankhamun and his queen, Ankhesenamun, in a tender domestic scene. She is anointing him with perfume, their faces turned toward each other with evident affection. The artistry is extraordinary, the gold still bright after millennia. As Carter and his team begin the slow process of clearing the antechamber, they make a discovery that adds another dimension to the find. Hidden beneath one of the couches is a small hole in the floor. When they investigate, they find it leads to another chamber smaller than the antechamber. Carter calls it the annex. The annex is in chaos. Unlike the relatively ordered antechamber, this room looks as if it has been ransacked. Objects are piled haphazardly, many broken. This confirms that tomb robbers did enter the tomb in ancient times. They probably entered the annex through the hole, grabbed what they could, and threw everything else aside in their haste. But they didn't get everything. Among the jumbled objects are pieces of incredible beauty and value. Jewelry boxes, game boards, vessels of calcite and glass, model boats, wine jars still sealed with mud stoppers. The work of clearing these two chambers will take months. Each object must be treated with infinite care. Many are fragile. After 3 millennia, wood has dried and become brittle. Leather has hardened. Cloth is ready to crumble at a touch. Lucas, the chemist, develops new techniques for preservation. Objects are treated with wax to stabilize them. Fragile items are wrapped in cotton and gauze before being moved. But even as this work continues, everyone's mind is on that sealed doorway in the antechamber. What lies beyond? Is it the burial chamber? And if so, is the pharaoh's mummy still there? The Egyptian authorities decree that the official opening of this inner chamber must wait. There are protocols to follow, officials to notify, preparations to make. The waiting is agony for Carter. Every day he works in the antechamber, those two guardian statues seem to watch him, protecting their secret. During this waiting period, something curious happens. Rumors begin to spread about a curse. It starts with the death of Carter's canary. The bird, which Carter had brought to Egypt, is supposedly killed by a cobra that got into its cage. The cobra is the symbol of Egyptian royalty, the uraeus that adorns the pharaoh's crown. Some of the Egyptian workers see this as an omen. The pharaoh's spirit is angry at being disturbed. Carter dismisses such talk as superstition. He is a man of science, not given to believing in curses, but the story captures the public imagination. Newspapers around the world begin writing about the curse of Tutankhamun. Every coincidence, every minor misfortune that befalls anyone connected to the tomb is attributed to the curse. Finally, on February 17th, 1923, nearly 3 months after the discovery, the day arrives to open the sealed doorway to what they hope is the burial chamber. It is to be an official occasion. Egyptian officials, including the Minister of Public Works, are present. Selected members of the press are allowed to attend. The atmosphere is tense with anticipation. Carter begins to carefully chip away at the sealed doorway. As the plaster and stones are removed, those watching can see that beyond is not another rough chamber, but something quite different. There is a wall that seems to be made of gold. As the hole widens, they realize it's not a wall, but a huge gilt shrine almost filling the chamber beyond. When enough of the doorway has been cleared, Carter and Carnarvon squeeze through. They are in a chamber slightly larger than the antechamber, about 21 feet by 13 feet, and it is almost entirely filled by a massive gilt wooden shrine. The shrine reaches nearly to the ceiling. Its sides are covered with protective magical texts and images of gods and goddesses. Carter and Carnarvon edge their way along the narrow gap between the shrine and the wall. At the eastern end of the shrine, they find double doors, closed with ebony bolts, but unsealed. Carter draws back the bolts with trembling hands. The doors swing open to reveal another shrine inside the first. This one also has sealed doors. The seal is intact, unbroken. Whatever lies at the heart of these nested shrines has not been disturbed since the day of the burial. The realization is overwhelming. They have found an intact royal burial. The mummy of Tutankhamun should lie within these shrines, undisturbed for over 3,000 years. No intact royal mummy has ever been found in its original tomb in the Valley of the Kings. This is unprecedented. But the shrines are not all that the burial chamber contains. In the narrow space between the outermost shrine and the walls, Carter can see more treasures. There are ceremonial oars for the pharaoh's journey through the underworld. There are elaborate boxes and chests, and in each corner of the room stands a golden goddess, arms outstretched in protection. These are Isis, Nephthys, Neith, and Serket, guardians of the dead. On the eastern wall of the burial chamber, Carter notices another doorway. This one is not sealed, but open. Beyond it lies yet another chamber, which will come to be called the treasury. Even from the doorway, Carter can see that it contains remarkable objects. Dominating the room is a large gilt shrine containing the canopic chest, which would hold the pharaoh's internal organs. The shrine is guarded by 4 golden goddesses, one on each side, their arms outstretched as if to embrace and protect the chest within. But perhaps the most striking object in the treasury is a figure of Anubis, the jackal god of the dead. The statue, made of wood covered in black resin with details in gold, lies on a gilt shrine mounted on carrying poles. Anubis was the god who presided over mummification and who would guide the dead through the underworld. The statue's eyes seem to gleam in the lamplight, watchful and mysterious. The treasury contains hundreds of other objects, model boats for the pharaoh's journey through the underworld, chests containing jewelry and precious amulets, and most poignantly, 2 small coffins. When these are later opened, they are found to contain the mummies of 2 stillborn children, probably the daughters of Tutankhamun and his queen. The tragedy of these tiny coffins adds a human dimension to the splendor of the tomb. Tutankhamun died without an heir, ending his family line. The work of documenting and clearing the burial chamber and treasury will take even longer than the antechamber. The shrines alone present a massive challenge. There are 4 shrines in total, nested one inside the other like Russian dolls. Each must be carefully dismantled, documented, and conserved. The largest shrine is 17 feet long and 11 feet wide. barely fitting in the burial chamber. The ancient workers had to assemble it in place, and Carter's team must now reverse that process. As the shrines are carefully taken apart piece by piece, they reveal their secrets. The walls of each shrine are covered with texts and images from the Egyptian books of the afterlife, the Book of the Dead, the Amduat, the Book of Gates. These texts were meant to guide and protect the pharaoh on his journey through the underworld. The images show Tutankhamun meeting various gods, passing through gates guarded by demons, sailing in the solar bark with Ra, the sun god. The craftsmanship of the shrines is extraordinary. They are made of wood covered with gold leaf, but the gold is not merely applied flat. It is worked in relief, creating three-dimensional images and hieroglyphs. Some sections are inlaid with blue faience, creating a stunning contrast with the gold. Despite their age, the colors are still vivid, the gold still brilliant. It takes 84 days of careful work to dismantle the shrines. Finally, in early February 1924, more than a year after the tomb's discovery, the last shrine is removed to reveal what lies at the heart of this golden nest, a magnificent sarcophagus of yellow quartzite. The sarcophagus is beautiful in its simplicity compared to the ornate shrines. It is carved from a single block of quartzite with a red granite lid. At each corner stands one of the four protective goddesses, carved in high relief, their wings outstretched. The surface is inscribed with religious texts, and the whole sarcophagus is oriented precisely to the cardinal points of the compass. The lid of the sarcophagus weighs over 1.25 tons. Lifting it requires special equipment, pulleys and ropes carefully positioned. On February 12, 1924, in the presence of Egyptian officials and selected observers, the lid is slowly raised. Inside the sarcophagus lies a coffin. But what a coffin! It is anthropoid, shaped like a human figure, and it is covered entirely in gold. The face is that of Tutankhamun, wearing the Nemes headdress of a pharaoh with the cobra and vulture, symbols of Lower and Upper Egypt. On his brow the hands are crossed over the chest, holding the crook and flail, symbols of kingship. The workmanship is breathtaking. Every detail is perfect, from the individual feathers on the wings that wrap around the body to the intricate patterns of the jewelry depicted on the chest. But this golden coffin is not the end. When it is lifted out of the sarcophagus, it proves to be incredibly heavy, suggesting that there is more inside indeed. When the lid of the first coffin is raised, it reveals a second coffin, even more magnificent than the first. This one is also covered in gold, but it is inlaid with glass and semi-precious stones forming intricate patterns. The face is again that of the young king, but this time the expression seems different, more serene, more otherworldly. The second coffin also contains a third. And when this third coffin is revealed, those present gasp in amazement. It is made of solid gold. Not gold leaf over wood, but solid gold. It weighs 243 pounds. The cost of such an object, even in ancient times, would have been staggering. It shows the immense wealth of Egypt during the New Kingdom, and the importance placed on the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. This innermost coffin is perhaps the most beautiful of all. The gold is inlaid with glass and semi-precious stones. The face is serene, almost smiling. The details are incredibly fine, down to the individual hairs of the false beard that adorns the chin. This is the face of a god, for in death the pharaoh became one with Osiris, lord of the underworld. When the lid of the solid gold coffin is finally raised, there lies the mummy of Tutankhamun. But the mummy is not immediately visible. It is covered with a golden mask, perhaps the most famous object from the entire tomb. The mask, made of solid gold inlaid with glass and semi-precious stones, covers the head and shoulders of the mummy. It shows the king wearing the Nemes headdress with the cobra and vulture at the brow. The eyes are inlaid with obsidian and quartz, seeming almost alive. The expression is one of serene beauty, the face of a young man at peace. The mask weighs 22.5 pounds. It is a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship, so perfect that it seems impossible it was made over 3,000 years ago. When Carter first sees it, he is moved almost to tears. This is the face of Tutankhamun, the boy king he has sought for so long. But the examination of the mummy itself reveals that time has not been kind to the mortal remains of the pharaoh. The mummy is in poor condition, damaged by the excessive use of resins and oils. During the mummification process, these have carbonized over time, turning the wrappings black and making them stick together. The mummy adheres to the bottom of the coffin and must be examined in place. The unwrapping of the mummy is done scientifically, with anatomist Douglas Derry leading the examination. As the layers of linen are carefully removed, they reveal numerous amulets and pieces of jewelry placed on the body for protection in the afterlife. There are gold finger stalls on each finger and toe. There are bracelets and necklaces of gold and precious stones. There is a golden dagger on the thigh, its blade made of iron, a metal more valuable than gold in Tutankhamun's time. The body itself tells a story. Tutankhamun was about 19 years old when he died. He stood about 5 feet 6 inches tall, average for his time. His teeth show that he was in generally good health, but there are signs of a fracture in his left leg that occurred shortly before death. Some modern scholars suggest this injury might have become infected, leading to his death, though this remains speculation. The head of the mummy, once the golden mask is removed, is in better condition than the body. The face is that of a young man with refined features, the eyes are closed, the expression peaceful. This is the face that the golden mask was modeled on, the face of the real Tutankhamun. As the examination continues, more treasures are revealed. Within the wrappings are 143 precious objects. Each has religious significance, meant to protect the king in the afterlife. There are golden sandals for his feet so he can walk in the afterlife. There is a heart scarab inscribed with a spell from the Book of the Dead, placed over the heart to ensure it would not testify against him in the judgment of the dead. But perhaps the most poignant finds are the personal items. Around the king's neck, beneath all the ceremonial jewelry, is a simple string of beads, the kind a child might wear. Was this a favorite possession from his childhood? We can only speculate. There are also flowers, still visible, though dried and fragile, placed on the coffin. These were the last offerings, perhaps placed there by his young widow, Ankhesenamun. The clearing of the tomb continues for several more years. Every chamber yields its treasures. In the treasury, the canopic chest is opened to reveal 4 miniature gold coffins, each containing the mummified organs of the king. These tiny coffins are perfect replicas of the second coffin, complete with inlaid decoration. There are hundreds of shabtis, small figurines meant to serve the king in the afterlife. These are made of various materials: wood, faience, stone, and some of solid gold. Each is inscribed with a spell from the Book of the Dead, animating them to work for the king when called upon. There are shabtis for every day of the year, plus overseers to manage them, a complete workforce for eternity. There are the king's chariots, dismantled and stored in the tomb. When reassembled, they prove to be marvels of ancient technology. Light, fast, and highly decorated with gold and precious materials, there are bows and arrows, hundreds of them, some child-sized from when Tutankhamun was young, others full-sized. The king was clearly an archer, and these weapons would serve him in the afterlife hunts. There are clothes, remarkably preserved, linen shirts and kilts, sandals of leather and papyrus, gloves, socks, and undergarments. There are over 100 loin cloths, triangular pieces of linen that were the standard undergarment. Some are plain, others decorated with embroidery. They show us that even a god-king concerned himself with everyday comfort. There are the remains of food offerings, joints of meat, mummified and placed in boxes, bread, cakes, and fruits, dried but still recognizable jars of wine, their clay stoppers inscribed with the vintage and vineyard. The ancient Egyptians believed the dead needed sustenance in the afterlife, and Tutankhamun was well provided for. Among the most intriguing finds are objects that hint at the politics and religion of Tutankhamun's time. There are items bearing the name of Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who was probably Tutankhamun's father. These were likely heirlooms, kept despite the official condemnation of Akhenaten's memory. There are also items that show the restoration of the old religion, images of Amun and other traditional gods that Akhenaten had tried to suppress. The work on the tomb brings challenges beyond the archaeological. The worldwide attention creates problems. Tourists flood to the Valley of the Kings, all wanting to see the tomb. The press is insatiable. wanting constant updates, exclusive stories, photographs. There are disputes over who has the rights to the story, who can publish what, who owns the photographs. There are also political tensions. Egypt in the 1920s is moving toward independence from British influence. Some Egyptians see the excavation as another example of foreigners taking Egypt's treasures. They argue that the tomb and its contents belong to Egypt, not to foreign archaeologists or museums. These tensions will eventually lead to changes in how archaeological work is conducted in Egypt. Lord Carnarvon, unfortunately, does not live to see the full excavation of the tomb. In March 1923, just months after the opening of the burial chamber, he dies in Cairo. The cause is blood poisoning from an infected mosquito bite, exacerbated by pneumonia. His death at age 57, so soon after entering the tomb, fuels the rumors of a curse. Newspapers around the world proclaim that the curse of Tutankhamun has claimed its first victim. Carter, ever the rationalist, points out that if there were a curse, he should be its first victim, as he was first to enter the tomb. He continues to work on the excavation for another decade, living to the age of 64. Most of the others who entered the tomb also lived normal lifespans. But the legend of the curse persists, adding a layer of mystery to an already remarkable discovery. The excavation and conservation of the tomb's contents continues until 1932, a full decade after the discovery. By the end, over 5,000 objects have been catalogued. Each has been photographed, drawn, described, and carefully conserved. It is one of the most thorough archaeological excavations ever conducted. The treasures of Tutankhamun transform our understanding of ancient Egypt. Before this discovery, most of what we knew about Egyptian burial practices came from tomb paintings and robbed tombs. Now we can see the actual objects, understand their use, appreciate their beauty. The tomb shows us the incredible skill of ancient Egyptian craftsmen, the wealth of the New Kingdom, the complex religious beliefs surrounding death and the afterlife. But beyond the gold and jewels, the tomb gives us something more precious. It gives us a glimpse of a real person. Tutankhamun was not just a name in a king list, but a young man who lived and died over 3,000 years ago. He had possessions he valued. He had a wife who loved him. He tried to have children and failed. He enjoyed hunting and archery. He played board games. He wore comfortable clothes and fine jewelry. The objects in the tomb span the range from the divine to the mundane. There are items of incredible beauty and value, worthy of a god-king, but there are also simple, everyday things. A razor for shaving, a fire-making kit, board games for entertainment. These remind us that for all his divine status, Tutankhamun was human. Consider the throne found in the antechamber. It's a spectacular piece, covered in gold and decorated with thousands of inlays. But look closely at the scene on the backrest. It shows Tutankhamun and his queen in an intimate moment. She's applying perfume or oil to his shoulder. They gaze at each other with affection. Above them shines the Aten, the sun disk, a remnant of his father's religion. This is not just a ceremonial object. It's a window into a marriage, a relationship between two young people who happen to be royalty. Or think about the golden shrines that surrounded the sarcophagus. Yes, they are covered with religious texts and images, but these texts reveal the ancient Egyptian conception of the afterlife, their fears and hopes. The dead pharaoh must pass through gates guarded by demons with names like Swallower of Sinners, and backward-facing one who comes out of the abyss. He must recite the correct spells, know the proper passwords. The afterlife was not guaranteed, even for a pharaoh. It had to be earned, negotiated, won through knowledge and virtue. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb also raises questions that remain unanswered. Why was this relatively minor pharaoh buried with such wealth? What happened to the tombs of more significant rulers? Where is the tomb of Alexander the Great, who was buried in Egypt? Where are the tombs of Cleopatra and Mark Antony? The Valley of the Kings may still hold secrets. There are mysteries within the tomb itself. Why was it so small for a royal burial? Most pharaohs' tombs are extensive. With long corridors and multiple chambers, Tutankhamun's tomb seems cramped, as if it was not originally intended for a king. Some scholars suggest it was originally built for someone else, perhaps Ai, who succeeded Tutankhamun as pharaoh when the young king died unexpectedly. This smaller tomb was hastily adapted for royal use. Why are there signs of two different artistic styles in the tomb goods? Some objects seem to belong to the Amarna period, the time of Akhenaten's religious revolution. Others clearly belong to the Restoration period when the old gods were brought back. This mix suggests that Tutankhamun's burial goods included heirlooms, perhaps items that belong to other members of the royal family. And what about the two stillborn children buried in the treasury? Genetic analysis in modern times has confirmed they were likely Tutankhamun's daughters. Their presence in the tomb speaks to personal tragedy. The young king died without an heir, ending his family line. His widow, Ankhesenamun, would write to the Hittite king after Tutankhamun's death, begging him to send one of his sons for her to marry, saying she was afraid and alone. The letter speaks to the political turmoil following Tutankhamun's death. The legacy of Tutankhamun extends far beyond archaeology. The discovery sparks a worldwide fascination with ancient Egypt that continues to this day. Egyptian motifs appear in art, architecture, fashion, and popular culture. The Art Deco movement of the 1920s and 30s draws heavily on Egyptian designs inspired by the tomb's treasures. Jewelry, furniture, and buildings incorporate lotus flowers, scarabs, and hieroglyphs. Museums around the world create Egyptian collections inspired by the treasures of Tutankhamun. The traveling exhibition of Tutankhamun's treasures, which begins in the 1960s, draws millions of visitors. People queue for hours to see the golden mask, to stand in the presence of objects that are 3,000 years old, yet seem timeless in their beauty. The discovery also transforms archaeology itself. Carter's meticulous methods, his insistence on documentation and conservation, set new standards for archaeological excavation. Future archaeologists will build on his techniques, developing even more sophisticated methods for preserving and studying ancient remains. Modern technology has allowed us to learn even more from Tutankhamun's mummy. CT scans and DNA analysis have revealed details about his health, his family relationships, his possible cause of death. We know he suffered from malaria. He had a club foot that would have required him to walk with a cane, which explains the many walking sticks found in his tomb. He was not murdered, as some once speculated, but likely died from a combination of factors, possibly including that broken leg that became infected. The DNA analysis has also helped identify other royal mummies, establishing family relationships across generations of pharaohs. We now know that the mummy known as KV55 is likely Akhenaten, Tutankhamun's father. The mummy known as the Younger Lady is likely Tutankhamun's mother, who was also Akhenaten's sister, a common royal practice to keep the bloodline pure. Today, Tutankhamun rests again in his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. His mummy, after being studied and examined, was returned to the outer gilded coffin and placed back in the sarcophagus. The tomb is open to tourists, though only a limited number can enter each day to preserve the environment. The walls of the burial chamber, one of the few decorated spaces in the tomb, show signs of damage from the breath and sweat of millions of visitors over the decades. Most of the treasures are now in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo and soon will be moved to the new Grand Egyptian Museum near the pyramids of Giza. There they will be displayed in climate-controlled environments, preserved for future generations. The golden mask, the innermost coffin, the throne, the chariots, all the wonderful things that Carter first glimpsed by candlelight are now part of the heritage of humanity. But something is lost in the museum display. In the tomb, these objects had context. They were placed with purpose, each in its proper position for the pharaoh's journey through the afterlife. The guardian statues stood where they were meant to stand. The boats were oriented to sail in the correct direction. The foods were placed where the deceased could reach them. In the museum, magnificent as the displays are, the objects become art rather than functional grave goods. And still, the discovery and preservation of these treasures is a triumph. In an age where so much of the past has been lost, destroyed by time, weather, war, and human greed, the tomb of Tutankhamun survived. It waited over 3,000 years for Howard Carter to descend those 16 steps and shine his candle into the darkness. Think of all the coincidences and chances that had to align for this discovery. If Lord Carnarvon had lost patience 1 year earlier, if Carter had decided to dig in a different spot, if the ancient workmen had not built their huts exactly where they did, preserving the entrance below. If tomb robbers in ancient times had been more thorough, if the priests who resealed the tomb had not done their job well. Any of these factors could have meant the tomb would never have been found, or would have been found empty. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb is really many stories woven together. It's the story of a boy king thrust into power at a time of crisis, trying to heal a divided nation. It's the story of ancient craftsmen creating objects of unimaginable beauty to serve their king in the afterlife. It's the story of Howard Carter, dedicating his life to a search that many thought was futile. It's the story of Lord Carnarvon, whose fortune and faith made the discovery possible. It's also a story about our relationship with the past. Why do we care about a king who died over 3,000 years ago? Why do millions of people travel to see these ancient objects? Perhaps it's because in Tutankhamun we see our own mortality and our hope for immortality. The ancient Egyptians believed that to speak the name of the dead was to make them live again. Every time we say Tutankhamun, we fulfill that belief. The boy king has achieved the immortality he sought, not in the afterlife the ancient Egyptians imagined, but in the memory of humanity. The discovery also reminds us of how much we don't know, how much has been lost. Tutankhamun was a minor king, ruling for just 9 years during a turbulent period, yet his tomb contained over 5,000 precious objects. What must the tombs of the great pharaohs have contained? Ramesses II ruled for 66 years and built monuments throughout Egypt. Thutmose III created an empire stretching from Nubia to the Euphrates. What treasures were buried with them? We will never know, for their tombs were robbed in antiquity. This loss extends beyond Egypt. Think of all the civilizations that have risen and fallen, all the libraries that have burned, all the art that has been destroyed. The Library of Alexandria, with its hundreds of thousands of scrolls, the Colossus of Rhodes, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the vast majority of Greek and Roman literature, the books of the Maya burned by Spanish conquistadors, the treasures of the Aztecs and Incas melted down for their gold. Each loss diminishes our understanding of who we were, who we are. Yet discoveries like Tutankhamun's tomb give us hope. They show that the past can still speak to us, that patient searching and careful science can recover what seemed lost forever. Even now, archaeologists are making new discoveries. New tombs in Egypt, lost cities in the Amazon, shipwrecks with their cargoes intact. Each find adds another piece to the vast puzzle of human history. The technology available to modern archaeologists would seem like magic to Howard Carter. Ground-penetrating radar can detect structures buried deep underground. Satellite imagery can reveal ancient roads and settlements invisible from the ground. DNA analysis can trace family relationships and population movements. Isotope analysis can tell us what people ate, where they traveled. Digital reconstruction can rebuild ruined temples and palaces in virtual space. These tools are being applied to Tutankhamun's tomb and treasures even today. New scans of the tomb have revealed possible hidden chambers, though whether they contain anything remains unknown. Analysis of the iron in Tutankhamun's dagger shows it came from a meteorite, iron that fell from the sky, which the ancient Egyptians called iron of heaven. Studies of the flowers in the tomb have identified the species and even the season when they were picked, telling us that Tutankhamun was buried in the spring. Each new discovery, each new analysis adds depth to our understanding. We learn not just about kings and gold, but about daily life, about beliefs and fears, about love and loss. The tomb of Tutankhamun is a time capsule, preserving not just objects but ideas, not just treasures but stories, and what stories they are. Think of the moment when the ancient craftsmen put the final touches on the golden mask, stepping back to admire their masterpiece, knowing it would be sealed in darkness, never to be seen by living eyes. Think of the priests performing the last rites, the incense smoke curling up in the lamplight, the chanted prayers echoing off the stone walls. Think of the workers placing the final stone to seal the tomb, walking away down the valley, the entrance soon to be covered by sand and forgotten. Think of the tomb robbers who broke in, perhaps just years after the burial. Were they desperate poor, risking their lives for a handful of gold? Were they corrupt officials, abusing their position? We know they were hurried, grabbing what they could, spilling oils and perfumes in their haste. They took some jewelry, some precious metals, but they left so much behind. Why were they interrupted? Did guilt overcome greed? We will never know. Think of the necropolis guards who discovered the breach and resealed the tomb. They did their job conscientiously, replastering the doorways, refilling the corridor with stones. Thanks to them, the tomb survived another 3,000 years. Their names are lost to history, but their work preserved one of archaeology's greatest treasures. Think of Howard Carter on that November day in 1922. His heart racing as he peered through that small hole into the darkness. In that moment, he was the first person in over 3,000 years to see those wonderful things. The weight of that moment, the responsibility of it, he held in his hands, not just artifacts, but the legacy of a civilization. And think of Tutankhamun himself, a boy who became king too young, who tried to heal a divided nation, who died before his 20th birthday. He could never have imagined that his name would be known around the world 3 millennia after his death. He could never have dreamed that millions of people would queue to see his possessions, that his face would become the symbol of ancient Egypt. In the end, the story of Tutankhamun's tomb is a story about time itself, about how some things endure while others fade, about how the past reaches out to touch the present, about how death, which seems so final, can be overcome through memory and discovery. The ancient Egyptians had a saying, "To speak the name of the dead is to make them live again." Every museum visitor who reads Tutankhamun's cartouche, every child who learns about the boy king in school, every person who stands amazed before the golden mask participates in this act of resurrection. Tutankhamun lives not in the field of reeds, where the ancient Egyptians believed the blessed dead dwelt, but in our collective memory, in our museums, in our imagination. As you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you can imagine yourself there, in the Valley of the Kings. The sun is setting, painting the cliffs golden, just as it did on that November day when Carter made his discovery. The valley is quiet, peaceful. Somewhere beneath your feet, the boy king rests in his tomb, surrounded by darkness and treasures. Or perhaps imagine yourself as Howard Carter, holding up that candle, peering through that small hole, seeing for the first time those wonderful things, the glint of gold in the darkness, the strange animal shapes of the couches, the serene faces of the guardian statues, that moment of discovery when the past suddenly becomes present, when the lost is found. The treasures of Tutankhamun remind us that beauty endures, that human creativity transcends time, that love and loss are universal experiences that connect us across millennia. The ancient craftsman who made these objects, the king who owned them, the archaeologist who found them, and we who marvel at them today are all part of the same human story. So rest now as Tutankhamun rests. Let your mind wander through those treasure-filled chambers. See the gold gleaming in the lamplight. Feel the weight of centuries in the silence. Know that you are part of this great continuum of human experience, stretching from the ancient past to the distant future. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb is not just about death, but about life. Not just about ending, but about continuity. Not just about loss, but about discovery. It reminds us that even in the darkest tomb, beauty can survive. Even after 3,000 years of silence, the past can still speak. Even a forgotten boy king can achieve immortality. As you close your eyes, think of the golden mask, those serene features, that slight smile. Think of the craftsman who shaped those features, who polished that gold until it shone like the sun. Think of Howard Carter, who brought that face back into the light after millennia of darkness. Think of all the millions who have gazed upon that face since, each adding their wonder to the accumulated awe of humanity. The tomb may have been sealed, but the story was not over. It was merely pausing, waiting for the right moment to continue. And when that moment came, when Carter's candle illuminated those wonderful things, the story began again. It continues today, with each new discovery, each new analysis, each new visitor who stands transfixed before these ancient treasures. Tutankhamun achieved what every pharaoh sought, eternal life. Not in the way he expected, perhaps, but in a way that has proven more enduring than any ancient spell or religious ritual. He lives in our museums, in our books, in our documentaries, in our imagination. He lives every time someone speaks his name, tells his story, marvels at his treasures. So sleep peacefully, knowing that some things endure. That beauty transcends time. That discovery is always possible. That even in the darkness, treasures wait to be found. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb reminds us that the past is not dead, but merely sleeping, waiting for someone with patience and passion to awaken it. In the morning, the world will continue its rapid pace, its constant change. But somewhere in Egypt, in the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun still rests in his tomb, a reminder that some things are eternal. The sun still rises over the eastern cliffs, just as it did in his time. The Nile still flows north to the Mediterranean, and in museums around the world, his treasures still inspire wonder, still tell their stories, still connect us to a time when gods walked among men, and death was just another journey. The Golden King sleeps, and in sleeping, lives forever. His tomb, once sealed in darkness, now illuminates our understanding of the past. His treasures, meant for the afterlife, have become gifts to the future. His story, nearly lost to time, has become one of the most famous tales in human history. Rest well, knowing that you are part of this great story, this endless connection between past and present, between those who came before and those who will come after, like Tutankhamun. We all seek meaning, beauty, love, and some form of immortality. Like Howard Carter, we all search for something wonderful, something that will make all our efforts worthwhile. And sometimes, if we are patient, if we are persistent, if we are lucky, we find it. We peer through a hole in the darkness and see wonderful things. We discover that the past has left us gifts, that beauty has survived against all odds, that human creativity and love transcend the centuries. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb is ultimately a story of hope. Hope that what we create will endure. Hope that what seems lost can be found. Hope that death is not the end of the story. The boy king who died so young, whose reign was so brief, whose tomb was so modest compared to the great pharaohs, has become immortal through the very accident of his tomb's survival and discovery. So as you drift into sleep, carried on the gentle current of this ancient story, remember that you too are part of history. Your life, your loves, your creations are threads in the great tapestry of human experience. Who knows what future archaeologists might discover, what stories they might tell about our time? What will endure of our civilization? What wonderful things will we leave behind? The night is peaceful now, as peaceful as those nights 3,000 years ago when Tutankhamun's tomb lay freshly sealed, its treasures settling into their long sleep. The same stars that looked down on ancient Egypt look down on us tonight. The same moon that illuminated the Valley of the Kings illuminates our world. We are not so different from those ancient people who loved and lost, who created beauty, who sought meaning in life and death. Tutankhamun's tomb reminds us that we are all part of something larger, something that transcends our individual lives. We are part of the human story, the endless tale of creativity and discovery, of beauty and meaning, of death and resurrection through memory. Every artifact in that tomb was placed there by human hands, crafted with human skill, invested with human hopes and beliefs. And now, thousands of years later, those artifacts speak to us with undiminished power. They tell us that beauty matters, that craftsmanship matters, that love matters. They tell us that even the smallest details, a string of beads, a pair of sandals, a child's game, can carry meaning across millennia. They tell us that death cannot destroy what we truly value. As sleep approaches, Let the golden glow of Tutankhamun's treasures fill your dreams. See the workshops where ancient craftsmen labored over these masterpieces. See the young king wearing his jewels, sitting on his golden throne, playing his board games. See the funeral procession winding its way to the valley, the priests chanting, the mourners weeping, the queen placing those final flowers on the coffin. See Howard Carter working patiently year after year, never giving up hope. See him at the moment of discovery, his hands trembling, his breath catching, his eyes widening at the wonderful things. See the treasures emerging into daylight after their long sleep, piece by precious piece, each one a message from the past to the future. And see yourself as part of this continuum, this endless stream of human experience. You too will leave traces, memories, perhaps even treasures for future generations to discover. You too are writing a chapter in the great book of human history, even if it seems small and ordinary now. Tutankhamun's reign seemed small and ordinary to many in his time. It is only in retrospect, through the accident of discovery, that he has become legendary. And the gentle rhythm of this story, like the gentle rhythm of the Nile that gave life to ancient Egypt, carries you towards sleep. The images of gold and alabaster, of careful excavation and patient conservation, of ancient rituals and modern science, blend together in the approaching realm of dreams. Somewhere in that blend of past and present, of discovery and mystery, of death and eternal life, you find peace. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb is a bedtime story for all humanity. It tells us that sleep is not an ending, but a pause, that darkness is not empty, but full of potential, that what seems lost is merely waiting to be found. That time, which seems to destroy everything, can also preserve the most precious things for those patient enough to search. So sleep now, as the boy king sleeps, surrounded by treasures and mysteries. Let the golden mask watch over your dreams with its serene smile. Let the guardian statues stand sentinel at the borders of sleep. Let the ancient spells and prayers, carved on shrine walls and written on papyri, guide you through the landscapes of dream. Tomorrow will bring its own discoveries, its own wonderful things. But tonight, rest in the company of Tutankhamun and Howard Carter, of ancient craftsmen and modern archaeologists, of all those who have contributed to this timeless story of loss and discovery, of death and resurrection, of treasures hidden and revealed. The valley is quiet now. The moon casts silver light on the limestone cliffs. In his tomb, Tutankhamun rests, as he has rested for over 3,000 years, no longer forgotten, no longer alone, but accompanied by the wonder and imagination of millions who know his story. His journey to immortality is complete, not through magic spells, but through human curiosity, patience, and the irrepressible desire to connect with our past. And you, drifting now into sleep, are part of that journey. In learning his story, in carrying it with you into dreams, you help ensure that the boy king lives forever, that his treasures continue to inspire. That the patient work of Howard Carter was not in vain, that the beautiful things crafted so long ago continue to bring beauty into the world. Sleep peacefully in the knowledge that some stories never truly end. They pause, they wait, they sleep for a time, but they always awaken when someone is ready to hear them. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb has awakened for you tonight, sharing its golden wonders, its mysteries and revelations, its reminder that even in the darkest tomb, light eventually finds a way in. The desert winds blow softly over the Valley of the Kings, carrying whispers of ancient prayers and modern wonder. The same winds that covered the tomb entrance with sand now carry the story around the world. Time moves in circles here, where past and present meet, where a boy king from ancient times can still capture our hearts and imagination. Rest now, carried by these timeless winds into the realm of sleep and dreams. Let the treasures of Tutankhamun glimmer in your sleeping mind. Let the patient persistence of Howard Carter inspire your dreams. Let the beauty crafted by ancient hands remind you that what we create with love can last forever. The story settles into silence, like sand settling over the valley floor. But it's not an empty silence. It's a silence full of potential, of treasures waiting in darkness, darkness, of stories waiting to be told. It's the silence of the tomb before Carter's candle pierced the darkness, the silence of the museum before the doors open to eager visitors, the silence of history before it reveals another of its secrets. In this rich silence, you rest, surrounded by the invisible presence of all those who have been part of this story, the ancient kings and queens, the craftsmen and priests, the tomb robbers and guards, Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon, the countless millions who have marveled at these treasures, all part of the same human story, all connected across time by beauty and wonder, by curiosity and discovery. The golden mask of Tutankhamun watches over your sleep with eternal eyes, that slight smile suggesting secrets still untold, mysteries still to be discovered, wonderful things still waiting in the darkness for the right moment to emerge into light. The boy king has become the eternal guardian of dreams, reminding us that youth and beauty, though fleeting in life, can achieve immortality through art and memory. As the night deepens, as sleep draws you further into its embrace, the boundaries between past and present dissolve. You might dream you are Howard Carter, candle in hand, about to make the discovery of the century. You might dream you are Tutankhamun himself, young and alive, walking through his palace, unaware of the fame that awaits him 3,000 years in the future. You might dream you are an ancient craftsman, carefully placing the last piece of inlay on a golden throne, knowing your work will outlast empires. Or you might simply dream of gold and darkness, of patience and discovery, of beautiful things waiting through centuries for their moment to shine again. Whatever your dreams, they are now touched by this ancient story, enriched by these timeless treasures, connected to the great continuum of human experience that stretches from the pyramids to the stars. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb reminds us that we are never truly alone, never truly disconnected from the past or future. We are part of an endless story, each of us adding our own chapter, our own discoveries, our own wonderful things. The boy king who died so young lives on through us, through our fascination with his story, our appreciation of his treasures, our recognition of our shared humanity across the vast expanse of time. So sleep deeply, sleep peacefully, sleep with the knowledge that you are part of something magnificent and enduring. The same creativity that produced Tutankhamun's treasures flows through you. The same curiosity that drove Howard Carter drives you. The same desire for beauty, meaning, and immortality that motivated the ancient Egyptians motivates us still. In the morning the sun will rise as it has risen for billions of years, painting the world gold like the mask of Tutankhamun. But for now, in the gentle darkness of night, rest, let the ancient story carry you into dreams. Let the golden treasures light your sleeping mind. Let the patient example of Howard Carter remind you that persistence pays off, that wonderful things await those who search with dedication and hope. The Valley of the Kings sleeps under the stars, holding its secrets and its revelations in perfect balance. Tutankhamun sleeps in his tomb, his story told and retold, his treasures scattered to museums, but his spirit still resident in that small chamber where he was laid to rest so long ago. Howard Carter sleeps too, his life's work complete, his place in history secured by that moment when he first glimpsed wonderful things. And you sleep, cradled by this story, connected to this great chain of discovery and wonder that links ancient Egypt to the modern world, that links the dead to the living, that links the past to the future through the eternal medium of human curiosity and creativity. Good night from the Sleepy Network. May your dreams be filled with golden treasures and patient discoveries. May you rest as peacefully as the boy king in his tomb. Knowing that morning will bring new light to wonderful things, may the story of Tutankhamun remind you that some things truly are eternal, that beauty transcends time, that what seems lost can always be found by those who search with patience and faith. The desert winds continue their eternal dance over the Valley of the Kings, carrying stories from the past to the future, carrying the whispers of ancient priests and modern archaeologists, carrying the eternal message that in the midst of death there is life, in the midst of darkness there is gold, in the midst of forgetting there is always the possibility of remembrance and discovery. Sleep now, And let these ancient winds carry you through the night, through dreams of gold and discovery, until morning comes again to the valley, to the world, to you, bringing new possibilities, new wonderful things waiting to be found. But our story continues gently, softly, like the sand that drifts across the valley floor. There is more to tell, more to discover, more to dream about. As you settle deeper into sleep, let us return to those days of discovery, to the careful, patient work that revealed each treasure. Picture Howard Carter in his makeshift laboratory, set up in the tomb of Seti II nearby. The laboratory is simple but functional. Tables covered with white cloth, shelves holding bottles of preservatives and chemicals, cameras ready to document each find. This is where the delicate work of conservation happens. Consider the painstaking process of preserving just one object. Take, for instance, one of the many necklaces found on the mummy. It consists of hundreds of tiny beads, each no larger than a grain of rice. The thread holding them together has long since decayed. The beads lie in a jumbled heap, their original pattern lost. But Carter and his team are determined to restore it. First, they photograph the jumbled beads exactly as found. Then, with infinite patience, they sort the beads by type. Gold beads here, lapis lazuli there, carnelian in another pile, glass beads sorted by color. They study other intact necklaces for clues about patterns. They consult tomb paintings that show similar jewelry. Slowly, over days of work, they reconstruct the original design. Each bead must be cleaned carefully. Some are stable and can be washed gently. Others are so fragile that even breathing on them might cause damage. These are consolidated with a special wax mixture that Lucas has developed. The wax is warmed just enough to penetrate the bead. Strengthening it from within, too much heat would damage the ancient material. Too little wouldn't provide enough support. Once cleaned and stabilized, the beads are restrung. But not on modern thread. Carter insists on using linen thread as close as possible to what the ancients would have used. The pattern must be exact, the spacing must be right. When complete, the necklace looks as it did when it last adorned the young king's neck over 3,000 years ago. This same careful process is repeated for thousands of objects. Each one presents its own challenges. The leather of the sandals has hardened and cracked. It must be slowly humidified, then treated with oils to restore some flexibility. The papyrus documents are so brittle they would crumble if unrolled. They must be slowly relaxed with controlled humidity, then unrolled millimeter by millimeter. The textiles are particularly challenging. Many of Tutankhamun's clothes survived, but they are extremely fragile. There are tunics of fine linen, so sheer you can see through them. There are elaborate ceremonial robes, decorated with thousands of tiny gold sequins and colored beads. There are gloves of woven linen, made to fit the king's hands perfectly. One tunic in particular captures the imagination. It's a child's garment, decorated with embroidery. The design shows ducks swimming among papyrus plants. The embroidery is exquisite, each duck detailed down to individual feathers. This was worn by Tutankhamun when he was perhaps 7 or 8 years old. It speaks to a childhood before he became king, when he was just a boy who liked pretty clothes. The conservation team must also deal with unexpected problems. Many of the wooden objects are infested with insects, beetles that have been slowly eating the wood for centuries. These must be treated with pesticides, but carefully so as not to damage the wood or the decoration. Some objects are so fragile that they must be strengthened before they can be moved. Liquid wax is carefully injected into cracks. Bandages soaked in wax are applied like casts to broken sections. Consider the challenge of the chariots. 6 complete chariots were found in the tomb, but they had been dismantled to fit through the tomb entrance and piled rather carelessly. The wheels were stacked against walls. The bodies were inverted and placed on top of each other. The yoke poles were bundled together. Over 3,000 years, the leather has hardened, the wood has warped. Some of the gold decoration has come loose. Carter's team must figure out which wheel belongs to which chariot, which pole goes where, how the various parts connect. It's like a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle, but one where forcing the wrong pieces together could cause irreparable damage. They study tomb paintings showing chariots. They consult with modern carriage makers about construction techniques. Slowly, Painstakingly, they reconstruct each vehicle. When complete, the chariots are revealed as masterpieces of ancient technology. They are incredibly light, designed for speed and maneuverability. The wheels are works of art in themselves, with 6 spokes bent from a single piece of wood. The tires are of leather, shrunk onto the wheels for a tight fit. The bodies are decorated with scenes in gold and colored glass. Some show the king as a sphinx, trampling his enemies. Others show him hunting, his bow drawn, arrows flying. One chariot is particularly splendid. It's completely covered in gold, every surface decorated. The inner faces of the wheels are covered with scenes of bound prisoners, so that symbolically the king rides over his enemies. The body shows the king as a warrior, protected by the vulture goddess Nekhbet, her wings spread wide. This was not just a vehicle, but a statement of royal power. Among the most poignant finds are the king's walking sticks. There are over 100 of them in the tomb. Some are simple, functional sticks. Others are elaborate, decorated with gold and precious stones. Some have handles carved in the shape of enemies, so the king would symbolically have his foe in his grasp. The number of walking sticks, unusual for such a young man, supports the modern discovery that Tutankhamun had a deformed foot and would have needed support when walking. The variety of these sticks tells a story. The simplest ones, well worn, were probably for everyday use. The elaborate ones were ceremonial, carried as symbols of authority rather than for support. Some are sized for a child, showing that Tutankhamun's disability was present from youth. He grew up needing these aids, and they became part of his royal regalia. There are also the weapons. Tutankhamun was buried with an arsenal. Bows of various sizes, from child-sized training bows to powerful composite bows capable of piercing armor, hundreds of arrows, some with bronze points for hunting, others with flint points for warfare. Throwing sticks, the ancient Egyptian hunting boomerangs, daggers and swords, their blades still sharp. One dagger is particularly remarkable. Its blade is made of iron, incredibly rare in Tutankhamun's time when the Iron Age had not yet begun in Egypt. Modern analysis has shown that this iron came from a meteorite. The ancient Egyptians called meteoritic iron metal from heaven. This dagger, with its gold handle and rock crystal pommel, was truly a weapon fit for a king, a blade literally forged in the stars. The tomb also contained armor, a corselet made of scales of leather sewn onto a linen backing. It would have provided protection in battle while still allowing movement. There are also shields, both functional and ceremonial. One ceremonial shield shows the king as a lion, devouring his enemies. The symbolism is clear. The pharaoh is the lion, the most powerful predator, protecting Egypt from all threats. But it's not all about war and power. There are also items that speak to pleasure and entertainment, musical instruments, including 2 trumpets, one of silver, one of bronze, partially covered with gold. When these trumpets were played in modern times, their sound was broadcast around the world. The notes they produced, the same notes that might have announced Tutankhamun's presence 3,000 years ago, sent shivers down listeners' spines. There are board games, several sets of them. The favorite game of ancient Egypt was Senet, a game of strategy and chance. The board has 30 squares, and players race their pieces from one end to the other with moves determined by throwing sticks or knuckle bone. Several Senet boards were found in the tomb. From simple wooden ones to elaborate sets made of ebony and ivory, the king would need entertainment in the afterlife, and these games would provide it. There are also writing materials. Tutankhamun was literate, as befitted a king. Several scribal palettes were found, the ancient equivalent of a pencil case. These contain reed pens and cakes of red and black ink. There are also papyrus burnishers, tools for smoothing papyrus before writing. Even in the afterlife, the king might need to write decrees or letters to the gods. The foods found in the tomb tell us about the ancient Egyptian diet and beliefs about the afterlife. Over 100 baskets and pottery jars contained food offerings. There was bread in various forms, from simple loaves to elaborate cakes. There was meat, joints of beef, goose, duck, all mummified to preserve them. There were fruits, dates, grapes, pomegranates, though dried to mere husks after 3 millennia. The wine jars are particularly interesting. Each is labeled with its vintage, the year of the king's reign when it was made, the vineyard it came from, even the name of the chief vintner. Some are labeled sweet wine, others good wine, and some specially marked as very good wine. The ancient Egyptians were clearly connoisseurs. Analysis of residues in these jars has allowed modern scientists to understand ancient winemaking techniques. Among the most beautiful objects are the vessels and containers. There are over 50 calcite vessels, carved from single blocks of translucent stone. When lit from within, they glow with an inner light. Some are simple bowls and jars, others are elaborate, with handles carved as animals or plants. One spectacular piece is a chalice carved to look like an open lotus flower, so thin that light passes through the petals. There are cosmetic containers of every type, jars for oils and unguents, many still containing traces of their original contents. After 3,000 years, some still retain their scent. There are containers for kohl, the black eye makeup worn by both men and women in ancient Egypt. The kohl containers are works of art in themselves, made of glass, faience, or precious stones, often in whimsical shapes like monkeys or ducks. There are mirrors of polished bronze, still reflective after millennia. The handles are often decorated with images of Hathor, the goddess of beauty and love. There are razors of bronze, showing that the king was clean-shaven, as was the fashion. There are even tweezers and other grooming tools. The king would be well groomed in the afterlife. The jewelry found in the tomb is beyond description in its beauty and variety. Not just the famous pieces like the golden mask, but hundreds of smaller items, rings for fingers and toes, bracelets and armlets, earrings showing that the king had pierced ears, pectorals, large decorative pieces worn on the chest, often containing religious scenes or protective symbols. Each piece of jewelry tells a story. Some bear the names of other royals, suggesting they were heirlooms or gifts. Some show clear Amarna period influence, with the Aten disc prominent, remnants of his father's religious revolution. Others show the restored Orthodox religion, with traditional gods like Amun and Ra. The jewelry charts the religious and political changes of Tutankhamun's time. One particularly beautiful piece is a pectoral showing the sun god in his various forms. At the center is a scarab beetle, symbol of the morning sun, carved from lapis lazuli. The beetle pushes the sun disk, made of carnelian, across the sky. The whole scene is framed by cobras and vultures, symbols of royal protection, all worked in gold with inlays of colored glass and semi-precious stones. The piece is both a work of art and a religious text, ensuring the sun would rise for the king in the afterlife. The small golden shrines found in the treasury are marvels of miniature art. One contains a figure of the king, but shows him in a very human moment. He is shown harpooning, standing on a papyrus raft, his arm drawn back to throw. His expression is one of concentration. This is not the formal, stiff king of official art, but a young man enjoying a day hunting in the marshes. Another shrine shows scenes from the king's daily life. In one panel, the queen is shown tying a collar around the king's neck, a tender domestic moment. In another, she hands him arrows for his bow. These scenes suggest a genuine affection between the young couple, married when they were little more than children. The canopic equipment, which held the king's internal organs, is elaborate beyond belief. The organs were placed in 4 miniature coffins of solid gold, each one a perfect replica of the second coffin. These were placed in a calcite chest, carved with incredible skill. The chest was placed in a golden shrine guarded by the 4 goddesses. Each goddess has a specific role. Isis protects the liver, Nephthys guards the lungs, Neith watches over the stomach, Serket protects the intestines. The sophistication of the mummification process is revealed through modern analysis. The brain was removed through the nose, a delicate procedure requiring skill and special tools. The internal organs were removed through a small incision in the side, then treated with natron salt to preserve them. The body itself was dried in natron for 40 days, then wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen, with amulets and jewels placed between the layers. The religious texts found in the tomb provide insight into ancient Egyptian beliefs about death and the afterlife. The journey to the afterlife was perilous. The dead had to pass through gates guarded by demons. They had to know the correct passwords and spells. They had to have their heart weighed against the feather of truth. If the heart was heavy with sin, it would be devoured by Amit, the crocodile-headed demon, and the soul would cease to exist. But if the deceased passed all tests, they would enter the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. This was imagined as a perfected version of Egypt, where the crops always grew, where there was no illness or aging, where the deceased would live forever with their loved ones. The elaborate burial goods were meant to ensure the king would have everything he needed in this eternal life. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb revolutionized our understanding of ancient Egyptian art. Before this, most of our knowledge came from tomb paintings and damaged sculptures. Now we could see actual objects in their original colors, understand their use and meaning. The tomb showed that Egyptian art was not stiff and formal, as often portrayed, but could be naturalistic and emotionally expressive. The influence of the Amarna period is evident in many objects. During the reign of Akhenaten, Tutankhamun's probable father, art became more naturalistic. The royal family was shown in informal poses, with genuine emotions. Children were depicted as children, not small adults. This revolutionary art style didn't entirely disappear with the restoration of the old religion. Many objects in Tutankhamun's tomb show this naturalistic influence. The throne, for instance, shows clear Amarna influence. The scene of the queen anointing the king is informal and tender. Their bodies are relaxed, not rigid. The queen's dress is so sheer that her body is visible beneath it. The sun disk of the Aten shines above them, its rays ending in hands that offer life to the royal couple. This is not traditional Egyptian art, but something new and revolutionary. But other objects show a return to traditional styles. The guardian statues are formal and rigid in the classical Egyptian pose. The golden shrines are covered with traditional religious scenes, executed in the formal style that had been used for centuries. The tomb contains a dialogue between artistic styles, between revolution and tradition, reflecting the political and religious tensions of Tutankhamun's reign. The sheer quantity of gold in the tomb speaks to Egypt's wealth during the New Kingdom. Gold was not just valuable, it was divine. The flesh of the gods was believed to be made of gold, their bones of silver. By covering the king's coffins and mask with gold, the Egyptians were transforming him into a god. The gold came from mines in the eastern desert and Nubia, worked by thousands of miners in brutal conditions. The colored stones and glass also tell a story of international trade. The lapis lazuli came from Afghanistan, over 2,000 miles away. The turquoise came from the Sinai. The cedar wood came from Lebanon. The ivory came from Nubia or further south in Africa. Even in death, Tutankhamun was surrounded by the products of a vast trade network that connected Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean. The techniques used to create these objects were incredibly sophisticated. The goldsmiths could create gold leaf so thin it was almost transparent. They could solder tiny pieces together with joints invisible to the naked eye. They could inlay microscopic pieces of stone and glass to create detailed pictures. The glass makers could create colors that wouldn't be rediscovered in Europe until the Renaissance. Consider the process of creating just one of the inlaid boxes. First, the carpenter would create the wooden structure, using joints that required no nails or glue. Then, thin sheets of ivory would be cut to cover the surfaces. These would be glued in place with animal glue. Next, the design would be traced on the ivory. Then comes the painstaking work of cutting tiny pieces of ebony, colored ivory, and wood to fill the design. Each piece must be cut precisely to fit against its neighbors. A single mistake could ruin months of work. The patience required for such work is almost unimaginable in our modern world of mass production. A single piece might take months or even years to complete, yet the tomb contains hundreds of such pieces. This represents not just the work of individual craftsmen, but entire workshops, whole communities of artists and artisans dedicated to creating beautiful things for the king. These craftsmen are mostly anonymous. We don't know their names, their lives, their stories, but their work speaks for them. In the perfection of a carved scarab, in the elegance of a painted scene, in the precision of an inlaid pattern, we see their skill, their patience, their pride in their work. They achieved a different kind of immortality, their art outlasting their names. The village of Deir el-Medina, where many of the workers who built and decorated the royal tombs lived, has been excavated. We know something of their daily lives. They worked 8 days out of 10, with 2 days off. They were paid in grain, fish, vegetables, and oil. They could read and write. Unusual for ancient Egyptians, they left us letters, legal documents, even laundry lists, giving us glimpses into their world. These were not slaves, but skilled professionals, proud of their work. They had their own tombs, modest compared to the royals, but still decorated with care. They worshipped their own gods, particularly Ptah, the god of craftsmen. They had their own festivals and celebrations. They were a community bound together by their shared work on the eternal homes of the kings. When they worked on Tutankhamun's burial goods, they couldn't have known that their work would survive when so many greater tombs were robbed and destroyed. They couldn't have imagined that people 3,000 years in the future would marvel at their creations. They worked for the king, for the gods, and for their own pride in their craft. That pride is justified by the treasures they created. The discovery of the tomb also revolutionized archaeology as a discipline. Before Carter, many excavations were little more than treasure hunts. Objects were ripped from their context, sold to the highest bidder. Carter's methodical approach, his insistence on documentation and preservation, set new standards. Every future excavation would be judged against his work in Tutankhamun's tomb. Carter's photographic record is particularly important. Harry Burton took over 3,000 photographs documenting every stage of the excavation. These photos show objects in situ as they were found, preserving information that would otherwise be lost. They show the progression of the work, the challenges faced, the solutions found. They are both a scientific record and a work of art in themselves. The notes and drawings made by Carter and his team fill dozens of volumes. Every object is described in detail, its position noted, its condition recorded. There are drawings showing the exact placement of objects in each chamber. There are sketches of decorative details, copies of inscriptions, diagrams of how objects fit together. This documentation is almost as valuable as the objects themselves, providing context and meaning. The political dimensions of the discovery cannot be ignored. Egypt in the 1920s was in transition. The country had been under British influence since the 1880s, but nationalism was growing. Many Egyptians saw the excavation as another example of foreigners taking Egypt's treasures. There were disputes over who owned the objects, where they should be displayed, who should profit from them. These tensions came to a head in 1924 when Carter had a dispute with the Egyptian government over access to the tomb. The government revoked his permission to excavate, and Carter left Egypt for a lecture tour in America. The tomb was closed for almost a year. When Carter returned, it was under a new agreement that gave Egypt full ownership of all the objects. This was a turning point in archaeological practice, recognizing that cultural treasures belong to their country of origin. Today, all of Tutankhamun's treasures remain in Egypt, as Carter himself believed they should. They are Egypt's patrimony, part of its cultural heritage. Millions of tourists come to Egypt each year to see them, providing vital income for the country. The boy king has become one of Egypt's greatest ambassadors, his golden mask the symbol of the country's glorious past. But the tomb still holds mysteries. In recent years, radar scans have suggested there might be additional chambers behind the walls of the burial chamber. Could these contain the burial of Nefertiti, the famous queen who might have been Tutankhamun's mother? Or are they just natural fissures in the rock? The Egyptian authorities proceed cautiously, unwilling to damage the tomb to investigate. Perhaps future technology will reveal what lies behind those walls. There are also ongoing debates about Tutankhamun's family relationships. DNA analysis has revealed that his parents were brother and sister, a union that might have resulted in genetic problems. This inbreeding might explain his club foot and other health issues. It might also explain why his two daughters were stillborn. The royal desire to keep power within the family might have contributed to the dynasty's end. The recent moving of Tutankhamun's treasures to the new Grand Egyptian Museum near the pyramids represents another chapter in this ongoing story. For the first time, all the objects from the tomb will be displayed together. Visitors will be able to see the complete collection, understanding the full magnificence of the burial. The museum uses the latest conservation techniques to preserve the objects for future generations. Virtual reality technology now allows people to experience the tomb as Carter first saw it. Wearing VR headsets, visitors can descend those 16 steps, enter the antechamber with its jumbled treasures, peer into the burial chamber with its golden shrines. They can experience the wonder of discovery without endangering the actual tomb. Scientific analysis continues to reveal new information. Chemical analysis of residues tells us what oils and perfumes the Egyptians used. Pollen analysis tells us what flowers were placed in the tomb and when they bloomed. X-rays and CT scans reveal construction techniques invisible to the naked eye. Each new technology adds another layer to our understanding. The legacy of Tutankhamun extends beyond archaeology and history. The discovery inspired a generation of Egyptologists. Children who read about Carter's discovery in newspapers grew up to become archaeologists themselves. Universities established Egyptology departments. Museums created Egyptian galleries. The boy king sparked a love of ancient history that continues to this day. In popular culture, Tutankhamun has become immortal. He appears in movies, books, documentaries, and video games. His mask has been reproduced countless times, appearing on everything from t-shirts to coffee mugs. The Curse of the Mummy has become a staple of horror fiction. The boy king has entered our collective imagination as a symbol of ancient mystery and golden splendor. Yet, for all our fascination with the treasures, we should not forget the human story at the heart of this tale. A boy who became king too young, who tried to heal a divided nation, who died before he could fulfill his potential, a young widow left alone and afraid. Parents who buried their stillborn children with all the love and care they could muster. These are not just historical figures, but real people who loved, hoped, suffered, and died. The tomb reminds us of our shared humanity across the vast expanse of time. The ancient Egyptians worried about many of the same things we do. They wanted to be remembered. They feared death, but hoped for something beyond it. They loved beauty and created it wherever they could. They cherished their families and friends. They found joy in simple pleasures, a game of senet, a cup of wine, a beautiful piece of jewelry. In preserving Tutankhamun for eternity, the ancient Egyptians preserved something of themselves, their beliefs, their skills, their dreams, their fears, and in discovering and preserving the tomb, we modern humans have shown that we value these same things. We too want to be remembered. We too create beauty. We too search for meaning in the face of mortality. As you drift deeper into sleep, carried by this story that bridges millennia, remember that you are part of this continuity. The same sun that shone on Tutankhamun shines on you. The same stars that the ancient Egyptians used to navigate shine above your home. The same human desires and dreams that motivated them motivate us still. The golden mask of Tutankhamun will outlive us all, as it has outlived countless generations. But that's not a sad thought. It's reassuring. It tells us that beauty endures, that human creativity transcends individual mortality, that what we create with love and skill can speak to humans not yet born in times we cannot imagine. Somewhere in Egypt, in a climate-controlled case, the golden mask gazes out with those enigmatic eyes, that slight smile playing about the lips. It has seen empires rise and fall. It has survived wars and revolutions. It has been gazed upon by millions of eyes, each person bringing their own wonder, their own questions, their own dreams to that golden face. And in your dreams tonight, You too can gaze upon that face. You can walk through those treasure-filled chambers. You can hold up a candle and see wonderful things. You can be Howard Carter at the moment of discovery. You can be Tutankhamun, young and alive, not knowing that your name will echo through eternity. You can be an ancient craftsman, creating beauty that will last forever. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb is a lullaby sung across the centuries. It tells us that sleep is not an ending but a pause, that darkness holds treasures, that patience brings rewards, that beauty is eternal, that love transcends death, that discovery is always possible, that wonderful things await those who search with dedication and faith. So sleep peacefully, surrounded by golden dreams and ancient mysteries. Let the treasures of the boy king illuminate your sleeping mind. Let the patient work of Howard Carter inspire your subconscious. Let the skill of ancient craftsmen remind you that what we create with love lasts forever. The desert is quiet now. The valley of the king sleeps under the eternal stars. In his tomb, Tutankhamun rests as he has for over 3,000 years. But he does not sleep alone. He is accompanied by the dreams and wonder of all who have heard his story, all who have seen his treasures, all who have been touched by the magic of that moment when Carter first glimpsed wonderful things. You are part of that company now. The story of Tutankhamun has become part of your story. His treasures have enriched your imagination. His tomb has become a chamber in the palace of your dreams. And in sharing this story, in carrying it with you into sleep, you help ensure that the boy king's journey to immortality continues. The golden light of the treasures softens now to the gentle glow of approaching dreams. The detailed descriptions fade into impressions of beauty and wonder. The historical facts transform into timeless truths about human nature and aspiration. The story settles into your consciousness like sand settling in the valley, layer upon layer, creating the foundation for dreams of discovery and beauty. Rest now in the company of pharaohs and archaeologists, of ancient craftsmen and modern scientists, of all who have been part of this remarkable story. You are not alone in your sleep, but surrounded by the invisible presence of thousands of years of human creativity and curiosity. The story will be here when you wake, as it has been here for a century since Carter's discovery, as it was here for 3,000 years before that, waiting in darkness for the right moment to emerge into light. But for now, let it be a pillow for your sleeping mind, a golden blanket of wonders to keep you warm through the night. Tomorrow the sun will rise over the Valley of the Kings, as it has for millions of mornings. The tourists will come to see the tomb. The archaeologists will continue their patient work. The treasures will gleam in their cases. The story will continue to be told. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, the story is yours alone, a personal treasure to carry into dreams. May your sleep be as peaceful as the boy king's eternal rest. May your dreams be as golden as his mask. May your night be filled with wonderful things, discovered in the chambers of your sleeping mind, and may you wake refreshed, knowing that you have traveled through time, walked with kings, and witnessed one of humanity's greatest discoveries. The story fades now into silence. But it's a rich silence, full of possibility. Like the silence of the tomb before discovery, it holds treasures waiting to be found. In your dreams tonight, you may find your own wonderful things, your own golden memories, your own treasures that will last forever. Sleep well, dream deeply, and remember, in the morning, the story will continue, as it has continued for over a century. As it will continue for centuries to come. The boy king is immortal now, living in our museums, our books, our dreams, and tonight he lives in your dreams too, golden and eternal. A reminder that beauty transcends time, that discovery is always possible, that wonderful things await those who search with patience and faith. The desert winds whisper their ancient secrets. The stars keep their eternal watch, the valley guards its remaining mysteries, and you, carried by this timeless story, sail into sleep like an ancient Egyptian sailing into the sunset, bound for the golden fields of dreams, where pharaohs and archaeologists, treasures and discoveries past and present, merge into the eternal now of peaceful sleep. Good night from the Sleepy Network. May the treasures of Tutankhamun light your dreams. May the patience of Howard Carter inspire your rest. May the beauty of ancient craftsmanship remind you that what we create with love lasts forever. And may you wake knowing that you have been part of one of humanity's greatest stories, a tale of discovery that bridges 3,000 years and continues still in museums and dreams, in scholarship and imagination, in the eternal human quest to understand our past and ourselves. Rest peacefully, dream of gold, and remember, wonderful things await.